So how good is Annihilape in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet? So this Pokemon has the Ghost and Fighting typing, an exceptionally rare typing. I believe this is one of 2 Pokemon that actually have access to this typing. Now the offensive spread is actually pretty decent because you have Fighting type's offense. And since Ghost type's offense is entirely different, that makes for 7 super effectives in total. Now, an interesting thing about the offensive coverage of this typing. Almost no Pokemon actually resist this typing. It's kind of crazy to think about. Offensively, this is an incredibly consistent typing. Probably the most consistent offensive typing in the game. Because in the current format, there is not actually a Pokemon that resists this typing. And a lot of those Pokemon are actually weak to this, which just gives this such good offensive coverage for just about any situation and makes it incredibly consistent. Defensively, it's not too bad. You have 4 things you're weak to, and a couple resist. You do have the dual immunity from Ghost. So not the best defensive spread. Something like Fairy Water is technically better, but this is still not bad, and it's definitely quite a usable defensive spread to work with. Moving on to abilities, we have Vital Spirit, so that prevents sleep. Inner Focus prevents flinching. This is already a Ghost type. Not sure why you would really want that outside of very specific scenarios. And why would you want Inner Focus to cover Intimidate when you can just run Defiant, which is far better at dealing with Intimidate than Inner Focus ever could be. So Defiant's the obvious choice, but there are some use cases for Vital Spirit if you're having trouble with, say, Amoonguss. Now moving on to stats, this has a very good stat pool. It's 535 base stats in total, very similar to that of things like Togekiss, but it's also very well optimized because the special attack stat is only 50. You essentially have pseudo-legendary stats if you're using the physical attack stat, which is reasonably high at 115. This has pretty good bulk stats as well, slightly better on the special defense side. And the speed stat is also pretty good. And in the current format, it is faster than Goldingo, which is a very nice thing for this particular Pokemon to outspeed, considering how effective it is into Goldingo. So very good stat distribution. You can run this fast, offensive, or just bulky. There's so much flexibility with these kind of stats. Though personally, I would suggest running it bulky because of this signature move called Rage Fist, which every time this Pokemon is hit, the base power of this move goes up. Now, the amount that it goes up is by 50 each time, and this move caps out at 350, which that's a very strong move if you think about it, which gives this Pokemon an incredible amount of offense, assuming it's able to just keep getting hit enough times that you can get this move maxed out. So I do think that makes Rage Fist probably your best Ghost type move. Now as for fighting type moves, it does have close combat as well as a couple other the less useful ones. But considering how this Pokemon can play into Rage Fist, Drain Punch is probably the ideal choice as your fighting type move for survivability, because this thing is very well designed for taking a fair bit of hits and then dishing out a very strong blow afterwards. Now this does also get a lot of coverage moves, so you have the punches and U-turn, Rock Slide, Stomping Tantrum, Poison Jab, even things like Earthquake and Stone Edge, Overheat for some reason. I don't know why this gets Thunder, but that's kind of funny. And even Outrage. This thing gets a ton of moves. But most likely, you're not going to be using pretty much any of the coverage moves, just because this typing covers itself so well already. So the very good offensive typing, combined with a very good stat distribution, and even a really good signature move that pairs quite well with the rest of this Pokemon, and you even have a good ability in the form of Defiant, this thing is incredibly consistent. Like, it is probably the most consistent Pokemon in the format, at least currently, because it covers itself very well. It has enough bulk that it's very hard to one-shot. Like, I've seen this thing take Pelipper Hurricanes, and then be able to dish out a lot of damage back to Pelipper using Rage Fist. This thing is just so incredibly good. Actually, I think this is probably the best Pokemon that has been added in Gen 9. I actually think this is better than Goldingo, because even while Goldingo does have some incredibly strong offense, this thing is so much more consistent. And that consistency means it can play in a variety of different formats, even if there's certain Pokemon that say outclass it or wall it. Which, speaking of that, there is a Pokemon that can handle this quite well, though it's not currently legal in the competitive format yet. And that Pokemon is Hisuian Zoroark. Mostly because normal ghost typing is completely immune to Annihilape stab, which the current popular build for Annihilape only runs stab moves, meaning Hisuian Zoroark is completely immune to the most common Annihilape builds. Which you combine that with the illusion ability, you really have no idea if you're staring down Hisuian Zoroark or not. You kind of have to play a guessing game. And with this Pokemon having relatively strong special attack, as well as stab super effective and a faster speed stab than Annihilape, this thing can effectively deal with it better than just about any other Pokemon. So while currently there's no outstanding counters to Annihilape, outside of strong super effectives, there will eventually be something in the format that's going to make Annihilape a lot harder to play. That being said, I still think it's going to be incredibly consistent even after that, because that's only one counter, and you can counter that counter with other counters in your team, or just not bring Annihilape into those matchups, and use it for pretty much any other matchup because it's so good as a late game offense or even early game offense. I've seen it used in a variety of ways, and I have found this Pokemon in particular the hardest one to play around because it's just so consistent. Even compared to Pokemon out of its league such as legendaries and paradox forms, I still think Annihilape would hold its own exceptionally well in those formats. I predict that this Pokemon is going to continue to see use well beyond the early formats and will probably continue to be a popular pick well beyond this game, because while it does play very well around the terrestrialized gimmick, it's also not very reliant on this gimmick to be particularly strong. So I think this is a meta-changing Pokemon that will forever affect every meta that it's in. Kind of like Incineroar. It's just that good, in my opinion. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see y'all next time.